Thank you, Chairman. First, let me just say that it has been my understanding that with respect to this vacancy on the First Circuit, I believe I'm the only First Circuit senator on this committee. It has been my understanding that there would be no markup for this nomination in this Congress, and that the end of Congress ends this nomination, and that the filling of this seat would be President Biden's call, and that if President Biden chose to continue with this nominee, who will then have had a hearing, that would be his choice and something to be worked out in the context of the next administration's efforts to appoint judges. So I want to thank Chairman Graham for making that understanding clear and public today. I think it is an important step going forward to show goodwill and some decency to the incoming administration. And obviously it matters a lot to me with respect to the First Circuit that I guess kind of represent. It's also, with this as our last hearing, a chance to reflect on recent practices that have taken place in this committee and in the Senate relating to judges and to judicial selection. And I think it has been, by and large, a pretty unfortunate set of practices. For a significant part of this administration, we had a private entity selecting judges and justices, particularly at the Circuit and Supreme Court level. That fact has been confirmed over and over again by the Trump Whitehouse and by President Trump himself. So I don't think there's much debate over whether it's true that a private entity has had a dispositive voice in the selection of Circuit and Supreme Court judges. And I think it's an unfortunate fact that group not only accepts enormous donations, but accepts enormous donations from donors who keep their identities secret. And I don't think there's a good outcome that's possible when you outsource the process of judicial selection to a private group, and that private group is allowed to accept unlimited secret donations. The notion that forces of influence won't seek to use enormous anonymous donations to buy a seat at the table where judicial selection takes place runs contrary to the entirety of human nature and political experience. So I think we have to presume that there were very significant private forces engaged behind this private group, asserting control over who got appointed to Circuit and Supreme Court vacancies. That was echoed by a separate private entity, which also takes anonymous, enormous donations, providing the political firepower to push the selected nominees through the confirmation process. And when I say big donations, I'm talking about, a $17 million check. I think if somebody writes a $17 million check to the University of South Carolina, they want their name on the building.
They'd probably
Who gives a $17 million check anonymously? It's peculiar, and it adds to the concern about private interest having control over who gets on these courts. Compound that with the wreckage that has been done in the Senate of our traditions, our norms. The circuit court blue slip is an obvious bit of wreckage. Everything having to do with timing and pace of hearings and number of judges stacked up at the table in a particular hearing, providing documents, doing adequate investigations. Essentially, any time, any norm or any rule or any tradition of the Senate stood in the way of a nominee, that rule, that norm, or that bipartisan tradition got broken. And I think we need to think about, as we come back in the next Congress, how we rebuild. Let me first say that I think Chairman Graham has been a very gracious chairman through all of this and has allowed us to have our say about all of this and has defended, probably at one stage just unilaterally, the blue slip for district court nominees. So I want to just set Chairman Graham aside in a quick sidebar for a moment's appreciation on those two subjects. But we've come to a pretty bad place now in this Senate and in this committee, and we need to figure out how to fix it. And I am bedeviled at how to fix it, because the way you'd ordinarily fix it is by coming to an agreement of some kind about a new way of doing business. But if what we're going to see with the next Republican president, whenever that should happen, is that whatever rules or norms or traditions there are going to get broken, then it's a moot effort to sit down and agree on what the rules are going to be if they're not going to hold when they're Republican presidents, and they're only going to hold when they're Democratic presidents. So I will confess that I'm a little bit stumped as to how we get out of this position that we're in. I'll close with a final observation, which is that through all of this, and watching so much aberrant behavior, both in terms of private influence and political norms being wrecked, not one, to my knowledge, not one judicial nominee has stood up for the kind of integrity that used to be the part of this process and said, you know, if this is the way this is going to happen, I don't need this job that badly. It matters to me how judges get appointed. It matters to me that the system be proper. It matters to me that private, secret interests not have a stranglehold on the selection process. I have a circuit court judge I know who used an interesting term. He said that he saw his colleagues, both at the district and circuit court, auditioning for advancement. Auditioning. Think about that as a word for what judges do. Imagine if you were a party in a case, and instead of you being the focus of the judge's attention, the judge was auditioning in this vital matter that it could be critical to your company, could be critical to your life. And instead of paying full attention to you and your concerns, the judge is auditioning in your case. And of course, the use of the word auditioning implies that there's somebody you're auditioning to. For whom are you auditioning? Who is it that you're auditioning to? Well, presumably it's whoever those big interests are who are behind the big money, who are controlling the selection process. And how are you auditioning? How do you know what it is that they want to hear? All of that just has an odor of rot about it. And it would have been nice, I think, if just once, one nominee in this whole process had said, you know what, this has gotten a little bit rotten. And as the emissary here from the judiciary, I think I'm just inclined to take a stand. I'll stay on the district court. It's a fine job. I love it. I get to try cases all day long. And I don't need this. But we haven't seen that at all, which I guess just confirms that ambition for advancement is just as alive and well in the judicial branch as it is in the executive and legislative branches. So I'll yield back my time, Chairman, and I apologize for that little disquisition on where we are, but
That's
I
okay.
do think it's important, and I do think we have some rebuilding to do as a committee and as a Senate. And I think we just on our side have to be very careful about making sure that we don't play by the rules when we have a committee or when we have a president, and the other side doesn't play by the rules when it's their turn. That's just not the way this can operate. It's got to be goose and gander that follow the same set of rules. And if I could figure out a way to rebuild it, I would love to. I just can't, and that will be my closing thought. If somebody else is smarter than me and can come up with ways to try to fix this, I'm all ears, but I'm stumped by the fact that rules don't matter, how you fix that with rules. Thank you.